Good afternoon. We can start, I believe. I'm very happy to see you today. I expect we are having a very interesting meeting today. My name is Snejana. I'm one of the garage curators, and I was honored to work together with Rasha and Koyo. These are two wonderful curators who will talk today about our project. I just wanted briefly to speak up about some issues. Our seminar is in the framework of a project which is called Saving Brutal African and Arab Cinema in the Era of Soviet Cultural Diplomacy, a prologue. This project currently takes place in our new building, and you haven't been there yet. I strongly recommend you after the seminar or during the break. We are expecting to have one for 30 minutes. Please visit this exhibition. Today is for free for everyone who was registered at our seminar. The exhibition is organized in the framework, again, with the framework, it's a repetition, says Snejana, of fieldworks. This is a very important project for us. Currently, we have 4 projects, and one of them is the exhibition, and the curators of this exhibition are Rasha and Koyo. Our main objective, already seen in the title of this program, our objective is to develop particular topic issues related to Russian/Soviet culture. In particular, Rasha and Koyo wanted to explore the life of African and Arab cinema artists and directors who came to Soviet Union and studied there. So this project is ongoing for 2 years, and results which are in progress you can see in our new building exhibition. And I can say that for these 2 years it was extremely interesting to work with them. It was not easy, and we understand that working with the film archives, institutional archives, is not so easy, especially working with such histories and stories which have forgotten, have changed, and you have somehow to find links in between and to fill in the gaps and the dissonance between oral histories and institutional archives. So today we are expecting wonderful presentations that will extend this topic more, how to work, how to activate these practices, how to activate these archives. They will use the word activate very often, I think. Several more issues. So Filip Rekasevich, and he's one of the participants. He also participates in the exhibition, and also Alexander Markov. Today he doesn't speak up, but he's with us today, and if you have any questions, you're welcome after the seminar. What else? Oh, by the way, we just managed PDF option of the brochure, where there is detailed information about the directors who studied in the Soviet Union. We chose 17 of them. So they tutors and coaches in Institute of Cinematography. So you can get all this information for free, just entering our website and downloading it for free. Very briefly about the structure of our seminar, our agenda. So Rasha and Koyo will speak up for 15 minutes, providing some welcoming and intro words about the project, and we'll talk about how to work with complicated institutional archives. Then we are expecting a very invigorating presentation by Filip Rekasevich, then 30 minutes break, and you can take some tea, coffee in Shigeruban building, or you can visit the exhibition and then come back at 3:40. And then we are expecting 2 more wonderful ladies, artists. I think I'm taking already too much time, yes, and it's high time to give the floor to Rasha and Koyo. The floor is yours. You're welcome.
But you get the meaning. I think that's
well, I understood everything. Strasbourg. I am Koyo, and I'll be speaking very briefly, introducing the project. First of all, thank you for being here on this wonderful day for this seminar, and of course also thank Garage, thank to Snejana and Kate Fowl for giving us the opportunity to work on this exciting project and to be back in Moscow. It is a great pleasure for us to be here today for these few hours of thinking together and discovering material that are strongly related to the project Saving Bruce Lee, African and Arab cinema in the area of Soviet diplomacy. I never really know, thank you. And we titled this, the project is basically a long-term research that involves a prologue, which some of you may have seen, which is currently on view now at the new building at Garage, and of which this seminar is part of. And an exhibition that we are working on that will begin here, and a publication. So I'm a curator who sometimes come up with ideas that turn out to be bigger than what I imagined them, actually. And Saving Bruce Lee started like that also. And before it became Saving Bruce Lee, it was just two curators meeting, discussing, and thinking about what they could do together. And these two curators were Kate Fowl and myself. And when Kate was appointed director here at Garage, I told her there is one project that you have to do. And it was the suggestion to revisit, to research, to unearth the history and the biographies and the experiences of the Soviet, of the African and Arab filmmakers that studied at VGIC. I always say VGIC, it's VGIC. Between, from the independence movements of the early 1960s to the dissolution of the Soviet Union in the late 80s, because we were convinced that there is a strong strand in the cinematographic language that exists from Hollywood, the French school, the Italian school, Bollywood, and so on, even Hong Kong. But the influence of those cinematographic traditions in other film, in other cinematographic languages were quite prominently studied, researched, discussed, shown, and so on. But the influence of the Soviet cinema, and excuse me if I keep saying Soviet, because the time period that we are looking at was still considered Soviet. So it's not an offense, don't take offense of that. It's just for the matter of the time period that we are talking about. So, and that exactly this Soviet cinematographic influence and language was not prominently shown. And on another level, very much also in the idea of the cultural ideology and the political conquest that Africa and Arab world, African territories and in the Middle East were for the ideological kind of imperialism that Soviet Union practiced without mainly elaborating on that, or, you know, at least from the side, from the African perspective, in a sense that that ideological conquest was a real political program to expand or establish or expand socialist friendship, and also that Africa and the Middle East were, you know, kind of the battlegrounds also during the Cold War. So the idea of the newly independent spaces in the 50s, in the liberation movements in the early 60s, that are becoming independent and taking sovereignty over their nations. Sort of the West is leaving, but at the same time that the West was leaving, there was this kind of background idea that the so-called East was coming also, at least the expectation of that. And film, I mean, education has always been a tool of conveying ideology, conveying culture and mindsets and mentality and so on. So in this whole program of seducing Africa and the Middle East, the Soviet Union, of course, also used the educative channels in terms of providing scholarships to a slew of young Africans and young Arabs to come and study in the Soviet Union. And our research and our interest is mainly focused on cinema, and I will let Rasha talk more profoundly on why cinema and what is the power and what is the tools and what are what are the mechanisms also used in terms of trying, at least on an ideological level. Practically it didn't turn out to be that, but at least trying to form these newly independent minds and these young people, African and Arab people who came and studied in the Soviet Union. So our project is really around a few axes or a few motives, if you want. We are, of course, interested in the biographies of these filmmakers that we have identified. I mean, there were many more than those that we are studying, but for the sake of practicality also, and also for the sake of kind of conciseness, I don't know if that word exists in English, we needed to sort of circumscribe, circumscribe the scope of the project. So we are studying filmmakers that came from Africa and the Arab world and that studied here from the early 1960s to maybe 1990. I think 1989 is the last one. And we are interested, of course, in their lives in Moscow. We are interested in the influence that this cinematographic education they received in the Soviet Union had on their own later work. We are interested in finding what kind of social, emotional, intellectual relationships they developed and created here. We are, of course, also interested very much in the work of the Soviet filmmakers that taught them, so through the mentors that they were working with, which are also a whole list of very prominent filmmakers such as Marlen Krutziev, or Talankin, or Kopalin, and so on. So, and it is the other aspect that is very important to this film is that it is, even though we are looking at an existing or historical material, it is totally new. This work has never been done. And it is more a work that can be or should be or could be embedded in the scholarly kind of scientific film historical framework, but it is in the context of contemporary art, and we are both curators of art, and this is also another level that is part of it. How we are bringing this material, this film, into the museum, as opposed to a cinema or a cinematheque, and so on. The other part of this project is also, and this is what we'll be talking today mainly, is the role of archives in unearthing histories, and the role of researchers, artists, curators working with archival material, and how those I can't say hidden history, but untold stories, but which are laying there, can be brought to fore and stitched together, and also archive as a kind of not a reparational act, but as an uncovering act of bringing forward histories that deserve to be told. So I know we don't have a lot of time, and that Rasha wants to run you through some material that we have before we start talking to our guest.
Thank you, Koyo. So I'm Rasha, and my name was different before I came here. No, I was born Rasha. Thank you. We would like to thank Garage, as usual, Kate Fowl, Snejana, Oga, Kira, Kolya, all these wonderful people who receive us every time and scramble to pick us up at the airport and make sure that we go to places and show up at the right time and help us a lot with opening up archives. So the heart of this exhibition and this research is actually should not really belong to contemporary art, should not be left in the hands of contemporary art curators or film programmers. They are academic questions. They are questions, they are black holes in film history, in your film history, in Soviet and Russian film history, and in our film history, in African and Arab film history. However, more and more, contemporary art has been taking on the role, if not to produce knowledge, but to activate or push the boundaries in the production of knowledge, in addition to the production of poetics. Our exhibition will aim to activate key questions. How do you write the history of these people who came from another culture, from another language, landed here very often at a very young age, 18 years old, 19 years old, in the context, in carrying somewhere the utopia of socialist friendships, learn Russian, and learn, more importantly, the language of dream, because cinema is one of the closest arts to shaping an imaginary. The first generation that came after decolonization felt, whether it was conscious or subconscious, they felt it was their duty to go back home and start a national cinema, to create a representation, to forge a representation away from how the colonizer had represented them, their people, their territories, their landscape, their history. So this would be more the generation from the 60s to the mid-70s. From the mid-70s onwards, it's a different dynamic because countries have been decolonized for 15, 20 years, and the filmmakers who come here come to learn to become artists. And they still want to forge a national cinema, they still want to claim a representation, but by then they want to claim a different, they are engaged with an existing discussion. And that, to me, is the most important. There are three important questions. One is, how do you learn to dream or to fabricate dreams in another language? Because they were learning the beauty of the VGIK at the time and of the Soviet project, at least in film. They had Azeri filmmakers from Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, Georgia, Armenia, and Russia. And all these people had formed something called Soviet cinema. But the Syrian and the Mauritanian and the Guinean were coming here to learn cinema within this code of Soviet cinema. The second really fascinating question is, how do young men who come from totalitarian regimes, and I'm talking about Syria, Sudan, Algeria, all of them, come to a totalitarian system and become subversive artists and learn the language of subversion from within the system. This is a very specifically Soviet story, but what you guys did not know, that it's also a Syrian story, that it's also an Algerian story, that it's also, at least in film, it's also a Mauritanian story, a Guinean story, etc. The big challenge for us is, how do we transform research into exhibition? How do we, how can we be pedagogical and not didactic, and certainly not pedantic? And how do we also produce materials that will inspire you, inspire visitors, viewers, filmmakers, and artists to also want to either share that dream or ask questions or want to dig further. One of the ways in which, at least I have learned, is from listening to the people you will listen to today. Ali Safi, Philippa Cesar, Katarina Simao, and our fantastic accomplice, the cartographer Philippe and Sasha. Artists and filmmakers dealing with archives, forgotten histories, blind spots, wounded histories, each one you will see today propose a way to activate questions, to bring out memory that's maybe in the subconscious or maybe not even existent, but you realize that it resonates with you. To produce knowledge that is outside the traditional terrains of producing knowledge. So I want to thank them for accepting to come to Moscow, to being here, and to being an inspiration to us. Hopefully when the big exhibition will happen, and after you listen to them today, you will understand more concretely what we mean by us learning from them. Thank you.